Today I'm going to talk to you guys about how to help your toddler read a little bit more. I often hear from parents that it's very difficult for them to sit down and read a book to their child, and so I think that this is going to be very helpful, practical tips for families who are really wanting to have that shared experience of looking at a book together, and not just having your child grab the book from your hands and wanting to flip through the pages on their own. So it's very common, parents say, I can't read a story to my child. They often take the book away and then they just want to look through it, the pictures on their own. And so this will be very useful information for families who are looking for those strategies on how can I get my child like step by step to want to be more interested in me reading to them. Books definitely encourage language skills, both the understanding of language, working on vocabulary, understanding, for kids to understand how to point things out in books and follow directions like, oh, where's the giraffe? And that a child can be able to point to a picture in a book is really, really important skills for kids to have. And so I think that, books can really generate working on children's understanding of language and also their expressive language. So their ability to practice vocabulary once they kind of understand what things are called, it can really help with that as well. Books are a really great way for kids to interact and participate in a joint activity. So something that they can do with their parents, not just on their own, flipping through the pages. Because a baby or a toddler who's looking through books pages in a book at pictures, they can visually start to, kind of say, oh, that's interesting. Looks like a dog, maybe it's a giraffe. But unless the parent's there to say, that's a giraffe, the child's only gaining like visual memory of what things look like and isn't able to pair when a parent, for example, a child's looking at a picture of a dog and the mother sees what they're looking at and says, that's a dog. The dog says, woof, woof. So then the child goes, oh, is that what it's called? Oh, and that's the interesting sound that it makes. That's the power of having children be okay with their parent reading a book with them, and super duper important for speech and language development, I think. So I was going to go over a couple of the different types of books so that you can, when you go to Barnes & Noble, when you go to the library, to look for books that would be appropriate for your child. I would definitely look at baby type books, toddler books, and they are generally categorized under a couple of different themes. My very favorite for the kinesthetic learner, so if you haven't watched my videos, it's really important to kind of go back and look through the videos where I talk about the different learning styles, right? So a great book for kinesthetic or the doers, the little action takers, the kids that are really active and playful and they like to jump off things and climb things and constantly moving. A really great book for them would be something like this, where it's a push button book. This is the best go-to for my little movers and shakers, my little kinesthetic learners. This is really great. And the reason being that it has a component of having buttons. So there's not just sitting and looking and listening. They can actually take movement, and the action is they're pushing buttons while they're interacting with the book. So there's some movement into the book itself, which really captures the attention of a child that likes to move often and climb. So this is one of my absolute favorites, and it's definitely in my evaluation bag, and it's in all of our therapy sessions and in every office of ours. It's called Simple First Words, Let's Talk, and I believe that they sell them in a couple different stores out there, and definitely online on Amazon. The reason I like this is it has maybe the first, I'd say, 10 vocabulary words that might be the most important for kids to learn, and it's not busy at all. So you can see on the main page, there's only 2 pictures. My other favorite thing about this book is for visual learners, because my little visual learners are going to be very interested in the letters underneath, and they will be looking at the letters and kind of combining visually what this word says, also with the picture. So I love this book for kinesthetic learners, and any parent that's really struggling with getting them, the first step would be a push button book like this, where you can interact together. So what I like to do is, what kids, as soon as they see this book, they start pushing the buttons, and there's very little way for us to get involved with the child while they're looking through this book. So what I tend to do when they start pushing the buttons is I repeat what happens. So they could, and I'll say train, choo-choo, and then I'll say boat, woo, and make a little movement. Eventually they stop just doing this and looking at it themselves. They start to push the button and then stare at me to see what I'm going to say or do. And that's great. That's a really great first step, and it creates kind of a back and forth flow to this kind of book. Here's another idea with this book. Not just them pointing to things, because we have two different types of book interactions, and I want parents to really understand this piece. When a child points to something and then looks at you, it's pretty much an indication that they're saying, what's this called? And so when you say apple, then they're fine and they move on. And then they do this and maybe stare at you again. And it's their way of saying, what's this? And then the parent should say car. But really, the child is initiating and taking control of the book interaction. Okay, so when I say, does your child point to pictures in a book? Yes, in this case, for this type of learner, they are pointing to things to get the parent to say something, but it's completely different when I say, where's the ball? And they don't respond, and instead they point to this, and they look at me because they want to know what this is called. So in this case, the child's not really responding to my question. They're just showing me things because they want to show me. Two different tasks, right, in this book. One is, can the child identify the picture that you mentioned, like this? Where is the ball? And they point. The other is a child who's pointing to things and wants you to say it. That means they're showing you, but it's not necessarily their ability to follow directions or questions. So anyway, this is one of my favorite books, and it's really fun. Remember, when you use this book, to repeat what it says. Cat. Meow. Car. And you want to make sure that the child kind of looks at you to activate you saying and making noises. So that's this is a really great book right here. Once your child feels really successful with that kind of book, the push button books, my next favorite go-to for kind of a child that's not really interested in book reading would be something like this, which is touch and feel books. And the other favorite is lever books. So books that, move, the little door flap moves, or open, like little lifting flap books. And so we can have the child identify, like point to it. If you say, where's the dog? And they don't know how to identify, you can take their little hand, as long as they're not resisting and pulling away from you. If they let you guide, once you touch the dog, something happens. So you have to be ready for guiding your child's hand towards the dog, to touch the dog after you ask a question like, where's the doggy? And then guiding their hand to touch the dog, and as soon as it touches the page of the dog, you say, dog! Woof, 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 woof. You'll start to see, if you start to show your child, they're going to want to start to touch the pictures really, really quickly, and they'll like the game. It becomes like a game, not a job. And I think that's the big central idea behind reading books, is that it's our job as parents to really motivate them. We're their first teachers, and I think that it's really, really important for kids to have a positive experience with a book, not just because the pediatrician says, are you reading 20 minutes a day with your child? What does that entail? Hopefully you're not like bear hugging your child and keeping him into place so that you could read the book really quickly for 5 minutes because the pediatrician said so. I think we need to do this in a slow, consistent manner so that the child has a really great experience. And even if that takes, having a book and using it as peekaboo, boo, boo. This is actually a great way to make it this thing called a book a positive experience that's fun to do with mom or dad. Okay? So that's really, really important to know. And then, of course, like one of the later toddler books and maybe early preschool books would be these that are kind of consistent and it has a theme to it, and it's very short, you see. So here's a Spot book, and I really like Spot. They tend to have open flap books, which make it super exciting to open up and see what's going on under the flap. Kids like it. There's action to it. But see how the wording's kind of short, so if you have a child that has like a short attention span, you're not going to lose them. In these kind of books, I think it's really important to use intonation. So when I say intonation, it's like talking like Dora. So Dora doesn't talk in a monotone way. She doesn't say, let's go to Grandma's house. She says, let's go to Grandma's house. We're going to go over the bridge and through the forest. So intonation is just the way you use your voice so that it becomes more appealing to a child. In this case, I think if we started with like this page, it says, good morning, Miss Bear. Good morning. I'm using intonation to kind of grab the child's attention, right? And I'm also using a lot of motion and movement, so I'm not just standing still. I'm adding some motion. I can also add sound effects when I say, oh, welcome to our class, Spot. Knock, knock, knock. Let's see who's behind the door. Open. Ooh, wow. Hi. Then we're using some sound effects, and man, kids like, even the ones that are active might stop in their tracks about what they're doing and stare just because you're using intonation and expression and movement while you're reading the book. I love to say, turn the page in between books so that they can start to understand what that means and help them do it. But also, it's a direction. So you're working on understanding, or what we call receptive language. When you say turn the page, that's a direction that kids can learn to do. And so this is another one of my favorites. And at the very end, once you're done with the book, you can say, the end. Close the book. For kids that are already talking and maybe speech delay is not a problem, it's important to start to know what kindergartners are going to be expected to do. So for kindergarten, they will start to ask, where's the front of the book? You can always talk about the front of the book. And where's the back of the book? The back of the book. And where's the spine of the book? And here's the spine of the book, right? And at the end of kindergarten, but if you can imagine it, they want to know if kids understand what an illustrator is. So the illustrator is the person who drew the pictures on the book. And who's the author? The person who wrote the story. So these are all things to think about, but the reason why it's so important to start with books and offering kids a very positive experience with stories, books, and language. So sometimes you have kids who are really interested in cartoon type like drawings, illustrated books. Other kids really prefer true, real pictures. So it's kind of good to know if your child prefers one or the other. Here are some real great picture books that can generate like talking and interest from kids. This one's on feelings in particular, and I think it's really important for us all to be exposing kids to kind of feeling books from the beginning so that they can express themselves better. But here you'll see, two real pictures of faces, and you can talk about what the children are feeling, like happy. And if you're teaching feeling type books, it's really great to see what's on here, but I think you need to relate it to the child, your child, right? So for example, I would say, oh, she's happy, like you get when you go to the park. Yay, happy, happy. And here's the sign for happy. Okay. Oh, he's sad. Oh no, he's crying. He's sad. Like when mommy has to go to work and you get sad, right? So looking for those things that your child can relate to the feelings, not just saying this is what happy looks like, this is what sad looks like. It's really important to relate those feelings back to something that means those feelings for your child. So here's some, just to recap about all of the different types of books that you can, show your kids, toddlers, preschoolers. I think it's really important that you remember that, especially for kids that have a very short attention span, it's really, really important to know that you don't have to read word by word what is on the book. You can kind of make it a little bit shorter. You can make it up. Say, for example, you don't even speak, English very well, and you don't know what it says, or it's too hard for you to pronounce. You can read it in Spanish. Make it up. So the whole point is that you're talking to them while they're looking at books. It doesn't matter what the content is. You do not have to read word for word. For toddlers now, it's probably not the best thing to do to show them paper pages in a book, because you know what my little movers and shakers and doers do with those pages? They will rip them. And so then you're teaching them not to rip books, and all of a sudden it went from very positive to something negative. They really want to experience ripping, and you're going to keep them from ripping their books. So let's not set babies up. Let's just get them cardboard books that are more difficult to rip, and then you're not teaching them what they shouldn't do. You're kind of setting up the environment so it's positive from the beginning. You want to remember to use intonation like we talked about. So the dog is in his house. So lots of intonation, almost like musical voice while you're reading to them. You want to remember to use sound effects. So you don't want to sound like a sick animal when you're looking through the animal book. So when you're looking through the animal book, you want to be lively. Think of a young little animal that's, fun and exciting. You don't want to say, look at the dog, woof, woof, right? You want to say, oh, that's a dog, woof, woof. And make it really super fun. Kids just stop in their tracks and stare at you, and they want to keep engaging with you. So remember to use lots and lots of sound effects. And then the last strategy for toddlers would be definitely lots of actions while you're talking and reading to them. So, for example, if you're looking at this type of book with pictures in it, and you say, where is the apple? And then you guide your child to touch the apple so they understand they're supposed to touch the picture, so that you know that they understand. Then you can go, oh, apple! And trying to eat them up. It's kind of a sound effect you would make if you were eating an apple, right? And if you said, where's the car? And the child touches the car, then you say, that's a car. So there's action, there's sound effects, and it all of a sudden becomes more of a game than an actual job. So that's the main point, I would say. And for families that you're not speaking the language, it's not your primary language, and say, for example, this is a book in English, right? So it says apple, it says car. Do you have to say it in English? No. You can say it in your own language, and that's still building on vocabulary. So don't just focus on what's said in the book, and that you don't have to read exactly what's in there. And don't forget to say open and the end at the end. That kind of opens up the book, like the story time, and then closes it back up. You can always say, can you put it back? And then have the kids put it where it goes. If you have a little box near your bed, You can do it that you can put it in the box if there's not a shelf. If you have a shelf, they can put it back on the shelf. So kind of something to close up the activity is always a great thing. Now, when is a good time to read books? Parents always ask. So when your child's if you have a little shaker, mover, doer, they are going to be moving, and you don't want to be running after them to read a book to them. Think about times where your child's very calm. That might be a time that you want to start to show books. So for example, in our speech classes that we offer, we tend to read books while the children are busy eating their snack. So they're still moving, and their hands are busy, but their eyes are on us. And so that's a really great time, and I definitely recommend it for kids that like to move and they're active. Snack time's a great time to bring out a book, even just one. And so while they're feeding themselves with their hands, you can be reading a book with them. The other time of the day that would be really great is kind of at the end of the day, and creating some routines to kind of close the day down. And so that's a really good time when your child's laying next to you, and it could be like a designated story time. Even if you're going through one, if you just get through one, that's fine. But every day there should be a consistent routine for reading. If we're creating readers in the future, there's going to be a lot of reading required in the schools. It's really important to start early and make this fun and positive. Okay, so that's about it for today, and I really appreciate you guys watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. I'm welcoming any thoughts on our videos. If there's something that you'd like for me to cover, I'd be happy to look at that. But if you have any questions or comments about what we've talked about today, I'd be happy to also look at those. So please subscribe and share wherever you can. If you know of any parents looking for ideas on speech and language, we would be happy to offer these videos to them. So thanks again.